Hi there. Welcome to the Sober Circle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
I'm Angie, and I'm an alcoholic. I gotta get all my drinks here together. I think what the speakers are doing bunched up here is we're all so scared there. We're just kind of holding up to each other here. I want to thank the committee for inviting me to come and talk at your Jamboree and join you here. And I also like to thank my friends from Midland, Texas that heard me a few weeks ago for their patience and tolerance. I haven't done much growing in about 3 weeks. There's been several people come up and tell me that they've not heard me, but they've heard my tape, and I'm always really glad. It's usually the sickest women that really identify with me, and I'd like to tell you that I'm just not in real danger to getting well, and I'm really comfortable with that today. I had a lot of secrets for a long time in sobriety because I wanted to fool people to think that I was well, but I'm not well. I'm intimidated tonight because JoJo and I have known each other for a long time, and it wasn't very long ago that she asked me to be her sponsor, and right now she told me that she would beat me up if I said that she was my pigeon. So that scared me. It was my husband's sponsor that called him a pigeon, so I'm kind of screwed up. The only thing I really know about is I know about me. And I know that because I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't drink today. And because of the grace of God, I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd also like to tell you that I'm from Blythe. For those of you that don't know where Blythe is, it's over at the end of the world just before it falls off. And that's where God sends you when He's punishing you for asking for specific stuff. You know? And what I'm doing in Blythe is that some of us will go to any lengths to be married. And I'm one of those, see? I forgot to say that I wanted this knight in shining armor, but not in Blythe. So you gotta be either real specific or not specific enough or something. Anyway, he is the greatest guy I've ever been with, and I've had a few. And he's the only toad I ever kissed that turned into a prince. Usually I kiss them and they're princes and they turn into toads. And let's just get it all up front right off the bat. I 13-stepped him. And if there's any spiritual giants here and it offends you, I'll tell you it offended me. I was 13 years sober at the time, but he's no longer a newcomer. He's sober 8 years, and you know, he is so great, he is convinced that I'm the greatest thing that ever happened to him. And I tell him all the time he never had it so good, and he agrees. And we're both dedicated to making me happy. He thinks that a woman's place is in the mall. So he never had it so good, and neither do I. I never had it so good for my whole life, it seems. The ruling emotion of my life, as far back as I can remember, before I ever took a drink, is hugging myself and rocking myself with a terrible loneliness inside of not knowing what is wrong with me. There was something wrong with me that didn't seem to be wrong with other people. I was born into a family that wasn't ready for me then and isn't ready for me now. They are not really very impressed with what you've done with me. They don't think I'm an alcoholic. In fact, my mother, if I'll ever go see her and she's got company, she'll pull me aside so I won't embarrass her, and she'll say, "Now don't you be telling them people anything about you being an alcoholic. You're not an alcoholic. You're always that way." And you know that. I understand that. I was born at a time when they kept the mothers in the hospital a whole week. That was a long time ago. I'm really a young person in an old container, but I was born a long time ago. When they came home with this baby, they still didn't have a name for me. And the reason for that is because my daddy wanted to name me after his girlfriend, and my mother's narrow-minded. Yeah. My mother is of the little purple lips, you know, the ones that get smaller and smaller as you get better and better. In Alcoholics Anonymous, it's called little blue lips, but she's a Mexican, so it's little purple lips. I had an older sister that was perfect. You know the type I'm talking about. They always told her what to do, and she always did it, and she always did it right, and she screwed it up for me, because I never knew how to be good. I never remembered how to be good until after I was bad, and then it's too late, so they're always whipping on me. And I didn't know I was a battered child. I thought that was part of the price you paid for not knowing how to be good. If I'd have known I was being battered, and it wasn't my fault, I'd have held it against them guys. I held everything against them anyway. And I have a younger brother, and all he had to do was be there. And somehow, no matter how much I tried, I couldn't be good. And they were divorced when I was 7, and my mother would say things to me, "You're just like your father." And I knew what her opinion was of him. She didn't like him too well. So she'd send me to the nuns so they could teach me to be a lady. I don't know why the nuns always get it, but you know, them nuns, what they thought a lady wasn't appealing to me then, and it isn't appealing to me now. I always liked exciting stuff. I also, I may not have thought of doing it before, but as soon as they said, "Thou shalt not," I had an overwhelming desire to do it. I couldn't get it out of my mind, you know. Don't dare me to do something even today, because it's so hard not to do it. And so somebody dared me, and I raised the nun skirt, see what she wore under all them clothes. And they 86 me from catechism, and they didn't want me back, and I got home and got my whipping. And the next day when I got to school, all the kids thought I was terrific. You know, they was all just carrying on about what I had done. And, you know, it filled up some of them empty places. Because me, it seems I was born with an emptiness in my soul. A big hole in there, a yearning, a longing, a hunger to be loved, to be wanted, to be accepted. Wailing like a wild animal, just rocking myself back and forth, not feeling that I belonged anywhere. And as a child, I used to worship my mother, just wanted her to love me and approve of me at least as much as she did my sister. And no matter what I tried, I was always baffled because I couldn't be what I what they told me to be. I always knew how to be. I just couldn't be what I wanted to be and what they wanted me to be. So I believe that I always had the pilot lit. All I ever needed was the fuel. And what happened to me is that I lived in a terrible environment that I know today is unnatural, and children not to be raised that way. But that's what happened to me, and I know I'm not alone. I had a stepfather that used to molest me, and I told my mother, and she didn't believe me, and there never seemed to be anybody there for me. I was never believed, and there was never anybody there for me. And I know that that's part of what I had to go through to get to where I'm at today. But I didn't know that as a child. I just know that I fantasized and read all the fairy tale books that I possibly could, and would go home and just pull the covers over my head and put myself in that position of the heroine in those books, and I had to live that way. When I was about 12 years old, I went off to be with my daddy because I knew it was going to be better over with my daddy. Now, I'm from Orange County in California, and my daddy was over in the San Fernando Valley where he'd taken up light housekeeping with a lady with 8 kids, right? And all he wants is one more, and here comes trouble. All I wanted to do was find some place where I can belong. And, you know, my daddy used to take people up north to pick grapes and prunes, and we were fruit pickers. And God made 2 kinds of Mexicans, as fruit pickers and non-fruit pickers. And I'm not a fruit picker, but they try to make a fruit picker out of me. It didn't take, so I was whipped there too. And we stayed beyond the season with the Gallo brothers, and they gave my dad a case of sherry wine, And I remember having a big water glass of that sucker. Somebody must have dared me. And I had a big water glass of that sucker, and when it went down good. I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, it did magic from the beginning. I mean, everything felt wonderful. It's just too bad something that good has to be wasted on social drinkers that don't appreciate it. Isn't that just so sad? I appreciate it. I loved what it did for me. And anything gonna make me feel that good, I want more. And then it's the next day. Somehow I overshot the goal almost right away. It's the next day. And my hair my hair stuck to my face where I threw up all over myself, and my clothes are torn, and I didn't know what I had done. And it seems to me I started a lifetime of looking at people's faces, trying to figure out what I had done, terrified to know and terrified not to know. I had a sense of shame, of being dirty, of knowing that it was unnatural, whatever had happened to me. And I put on the wall that I always did, like, I don't care, I don't care. And we that build walls, it does keep people out. But there was always the terror and the loneliness back there with me, and I had to hide it any way that I could. It was shortly after that I came back to my mother, and she didn't want me home. They'd been free of me over a year, and so this is the time when I started living here and there, and any ways that people would put up with me for a little while. This is also the time that I discovered the booze and the boys and the cha-cha-cha. God, I love the booze and the boys and the cha-cha-cha. You know, we Mexicans like to have them parties the whole weekend. You get drunk several times and love on somebody and somebody's husband. And I was one of the original topless, bottomless dancers in them parties. And I was always really popular with the boys, but you know, the girls were always trying to tell me what I did the next day, and so I used to beat them up, because we Mexicans also like to join the gangs and beat each other up and call it fun. And so whenever they tell me, I just beat them up. I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. I just know that anything that terrified me, I either ran from it or stayed there and tried to kill it. And I also don't know how to work, so I take up burglary. I know it's still not very feminine. I really wasn't a bad person. It just seemed to be a good idea at the time. I like breaking into people's houses and taking away their stuff. I was not being bad. I was just having fun. I was really surprised when the state of California discovered me. They didn't understand that my case was different. They took me before a judge that my mother and aunts and all them little purple-lipped little people were sitting there looking at me, you know, the disgrace of the family. And the judge asked me, well, young lady, what do you think we ought to do with you? Well, I'm real cool. You know, you raise your collar up and sit down, squat down on your chair, and you're the judge, you ought to know. It's just that I was the wrong person to have that kind of an attitude with. And he sent me to do a little bit of time for the state of California. I don't know how to be good there either, so I do 13 months. I was only supposed to do 9. That really scared me when they finally let me out. I thought I'd be the only gray-haired little old lady in the girls' reformatory. So when they let me out, I took my first inventory because I didn't want to go back there. I didn't have a home, I didn't have a job, didn't have any money, didn't have any education. Jesus, you know, I thought, what in order, I can't go through with it. So I started thinking, because I'm always one that wants to live in the answer instead of the problem. So what I thought is, I better go out and find me a husband, because God knows I need somebody to take care of me. And I went out looking for a husband in places that husbands ought not to be looked for. Unfortunately for both of us, I found one. You know, there's a certain type of man that always caught my attention. You know, they got the big muscles, and they wear them little T-shirts, and they got them tattoos. They got real shiny, slick-back hair, shiny, beautiful smiles and eyes, and they say, what's happening, baby? God, it just goes on. Doesn't that just grab you? true love forever. This guy built them castles in the air, and I lived in them. And 3 months later, we were pregnant, and I was married in that order. And I married a mainline heroin user, and you just don't live happily ever after with one of those. Very exciting, but not very happy. He had an idea of what a good Mexican wife should be. I had an idea of what a good Mexican husband should be, and never the twain shall meet. And I got the scars, and he's got the scars to prove it. I'll tell you, we were ready for parenthood. He starts hearing them stories about me. He doesn't want people talking their way about his wife. So he only wants me to drink when I'm with him, and that's okay. I want to settle down, too. You know, every so often I wanted to settle down, and this was one of the times. And he doesn't want me. He knows I can't be with anything because I get on his back an awful lot. So he lets me take little white pills with crosses on them. I don't know what they are, but I sure knew what they did to me. I had one eyeball over there and one over there, and I'd make baby clothes all night long. Put them together, tear them apart. Put them together, tear them apart. The same one. Chew gum, smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, and scratch. Don't you just love to scratch? Oh, God. Listen to the Mexican mariachi music and sing and clean your house with a toothbrush all at the same time. Just fun, I'll tell you, it was fun. After 3 or 4 days of this, you pray, God, just let me sleep. I just got to sleep. I'm tired of having fun. Anybody that has gone that route knows that once you start taking uppers, you gotta take downers. And you know, I used a lot of junk to control my alcoholism. Yeah, I used a lot of chemicals inside to try to control and counteract one another. All I wanted to do is not to think and not to feel, because I couldn't stand it. You see, one day at a time, I went into literal hell, and that's not what I wanted from life. All I wanted was somebody to love me and take care of me, somebody that I would be special to. So maybe not a lot of things, maybe a little house in some corner of some barrio with the tortilla smells and the enchilada smells and the little kitties and the slippers, kind of a Mexican Ozzie and Harriet type of a thing, you know. But it wasn't to be with this Dolphin and I. Because by the time I had my baby, I knew he didn't want to be married. And I knew it was because he didn't want to be married to me. He had found that thing out about me that everybody found out sooner or later. And they would walk away from me. When they put my baby in my arms, I felt like finally, somebody belonged to me. My baby belonged to me. I knew that nobody could ever take that baby away from me because she belonged to me. I used to sit by the hour and look at my baby, and I worshipped her. I adored her. I promised her I would never mistreat her, abandon her, and discard her as I had been. And I meant it with every fiber of my being. She inspired feelings within me that nobody ever has before or since. And if I could have been good for anybody, it would have been my baby. But I took that baby and her sister to places that children should not be taken because I'm an alcoholic. And I don't know that I'm an alcoholic. Way down inside of me, there was always a spark of the woman that I am tonight. But I thought that there was a monster that lived within me. And I couldn't be the way I wanted to be. I couldn't be the way them other people looked, no matter how hard I tried. After the second one was born, I left that man because he was not. I couldn't stand the beatings, and I couldn't stand the other women, and I felt so old. I was 22 years old and felt older than I am today at 54. I just felt old and used up. And I left that man because my mother told me that I was going to be like a rabbit and have a baby every year, you know. I don't know why I always believed every crummy thing she or anybody ever said, you know. I didn't remember any goodness or any kindness, although looking back I know I had some. But you see, I always hugged everything that would discount me, everything that would reject me. I hugged it to me as true and discounted everything that was good that anybody ever said about me. I left that guy and I went out looking for another husband, and I didn't find another husband, but I fell in love, and I've always been in love. And when I fall in love all over my body. Every inch of me falls in love forever. I can't remember the names of some of the men I've fallen in love with forever. The faces change, it's the feelings that stay the same. This time it's going to be different. Oh, God, this is the one. I don't know, I got the message that there was always going to be that one, and I spent such a lifetime. You know, one day I heard a lady explain it to me. It's like standing on the dock watching your ship come in. And then as your ship's coming in, your knight in shining armor is in that ship. And as you're watching it in the harbor, it sank. And that's the way I always felt that it was for me, because I couldn't seem to fall in love with the right guy. The boring ones were so boring. You know, the ones that go to work and come home and watch television. You know, I wanted me an exciting one. The one I fell in love with at that time was called CB. That was the nickname. It stood for Crazy Bastard. And, you know, they were all... The faces change, it's the feelings that stay the same. But if I'd have continued to drink that way, I'd have never come to Alcoholics Anonymous. But many a time I had to come home where there was not enough chemicals to kill what I had in that cold water shack. That when I would walk in and turn the light on, the sink would be black with cockroaches. And there was mice in that filthy floor. And it was a filthy place. And you know, I was put up in this gorgeous room here at the Hilton this weekend, and I have in other weekends, and I've looked at the cleanliness and the beauty that surrounds me, and I know I come a long way, baby, from that cockroach-filled place where I was a dead woman, that my soul was dead. I had killed it off, and I didn't know that. You see, in that shack lived those two little girls that the romance of being a mother had long since died, that the responsibility for them weighed upon me and choked me. And I felt so guilty about that. They had the big eyes. I didn't come here by myself. I brought those two little girls with me, those little girls that got to experience things that children should not experience. Even today I can see the evidence of what happened then. You see, they were not allowed to have any arguments. They were not allowed to watch television with any noise because they were terrified. If I would come to, I would start beating them. And once I started beating them, I couldn't stop and I wouldn't stop. And it was like watching somebody else. And I'd say, God, for God's sake, will somebody stop me? And nobody would stop me. I've heard many women come into the program and hear that they've taken away their children and they're very sad, and I know that they are. But in those days, I used to think, for God's sake, will somebody take those little girls and give them a normal life, because I knew I could. There was something horribly wrong with me. I just didn't know it was something called alcoholism. And I had to run in a lot of men and a lot of bars, and this is the time when I became an unprotected bar-drinking female. For 5 years, I drank out there unprotected. Everything that happens to an unprotected woman happened to me. I know the feeling of degradation and self-loathing that a woman goes through when she's unprotected, to be talked to in ways you don't want to be talked, and have absolutely no defense, because deep down inside I thought that they were right, what they were saying about me. After 5 years of that type of life, I started getting letters through the mail from my dope fiend husband. There was someplace in Texas, over here in Fort Worth, getting the cure. And he sent pictures home. And he says, babes, this time it's going to be different. And he had the muscles and the tattoos and so we made the Mexican geographical. We moved 20 miles from Mama. And we moved to Mira Loma. I don't know if anybody knows where Mira Loma is. It's by Riverside. And I think that it is probably the armpit of California. I suspect that that's what it is. Or maybe even worse. But anyway, this is the time. There was a big geographical. We bought the chickens and the turkeys and the little acre of ground and the horses, and planted the garden, and I even married him in the Catholic Church, and that's going to any length for a Catholic, especially since he was a Methodist. That's how, I mean, I was going to make this work. I was going to make this work with this guy no matter what, even if he didn't want it. But you see, that life gets to be too tight, gets to be too unbearable. And I'm a firm believer you can place me in the best of circumstances, and sooner or later I have to create what's inside of me, because it's inside of me I can't live. And before long he's making the run to his connection, and I'm making the run to the wineries. The best thing about Mira Loma, it sits right in the middle of 4 wineries. It's right by Cucamonga. I'm sure you've heard of Cucamonga. You haven't lived till you've been to Cucamonga. It is in California. Anyway, my drinking changed. Where before I had been a party girl, now my drinking changed. I became a bedroom drinker. All the fun was going out of life. All the fun was going out of the bottles. And all I had was the agony and the madness inside of me. Now is a time when I know what the words agony, despair, and utter loneliness. I know those words. I lived them in that bedroom in Mira Loma, where I used to lay on my bed in a fetal position and cry out in agony for help. I started going to the different churches and studying with some and getting dunked in others. And I go to some where they say, "Who wants to be saved?" I'd be the first one down the aisle there to be saved. And nothing ever took, because there was something wrong with me and God. Though I believed in God, I sure didn't trust in God. Not the God that I know today. And I just planned to kill myself. Living had never been anything that I wanted. And I saved my sleeping pills, and I took enough to kill a horse, and all I did was sleep for 2 days and 2 nights. And when I came to enraged, because I couldn't drink, and I couldn't be sober, and I couldn't live, and I couldn't die, and there was no place to go. I came to on what has got to be the loneliest day of my life. The agony inside is incredible. The pain to knowing that man had slept with me both nights while I was in that coma, and never once did he consider taking me to a doctor or to a hospital. I felt like a piece of meat that nobody wanted. And even upon that day, what I consider to be the loneliest day of my life, as I look back with some objectivity, I realize that my higher power has always had his hand upon my life. Because even on that day, there was a knock on the door of a lady from the PTA. Is there somebody I didn't want to see? The lady from the PTA. But in a moment of weakness, I let her in. And she sees in what condition I'm in, and she stays with me. And I tell her about this SOB and how he done me wrong. You know, I just always badmouthed him because he deserved it. And she stayed with me, and she talked about all kinds of things. But the only thing that caught my attention was that she asked me if I ever heard of Al-Anon. I'd never heard of Al-Anon, but I got the idea that if I went there, he would straighten up. So she cleaned me up and took me to Al-Anon, and somehow I didn't fit in Al-Anon. I felt a little bit like a whore would in a nunnery. There was absolutely no identification. But I always felt that way around a bunch of women anyway. Someplace I heard I had a beautiful smile, so I just stayed there and smiled, you know, that out to lunch, brain dead smile, but I smiled. I remember that them women hugged me. And every so often she'd come and get me and take me. In defense of Al-Anon, I'd like to tell you that she had only been here something like 90 days and had found answers for herself and wanted to share it with me. She didn't know what was wrong with me, the likes of me, because I wasn't about to tell her anything. And one day I heard the word release. I knew I couldn't divorce him. I married him in the Catholic Church. You're not supposed to get a divorce if you're a Catholic. But I used to contemplate justifiable homicide. So when I heard the word release, I came home and told him in detail how I was going to release him. So he used to sleep with his clothes on and a knife under the pillow, and I'd sit in the corner with a big black coat on and watch him. when he'd be a dozing off, I'd like to go take a little peek at him, and he'd go, "Ah!" I mean, isn't that so satisfying? Doesn't this feel just wonderful? And he'd say unkind things to me. He'd say, "Baby, I may have a monkey on my back, but you got an orangutan." Isn't that just about right? I thought he was so bad he made me look good. One day I came home and he was gone. He took everything that belonged to him and some of the stuff that belonged to me. He wasn't planning on coming back. And that's the way it had to be. Though that life was unbearable, it was familiar. And I'd have stayed there till I'd have killed him or forced him to kill me, because I didn't know there was a different way to go. I just know that I was in terror, and I just needed something. I just didn't know what it was. And around that time, that same Al-Anon lady took me to an AA meeting, and it really embarrassed me, because I'm thinking the Al-Anons have discovered me, and they talked about me behind my back and decided to get rid of me. Send me over there to their husbands, who they didn't seem to like either. That didn't. I mean, I'm not saying that's what went on in Al-Anon, but that's what I interpreted it as. I couldn't even give him any eye contact when I walked into that Alano club to the Al-Anons, because I knew they knew. And I walked into the young people's meeting in Pomona in August of 1964 in a scroungy old house, and sat in the back and listened to the sounds of Alcoholics Anonymous. I listened to that belly laughter, that smile that reaches the soul, that shine in the eyes, and that happy talk. And those are the sounds of Alcoholics Anonymous. The very first thing that attracted me to you was what was happening between you, because I had never heard it. I often wondered, what is it and where does it come from, that which happens in here between you and I? And I consider it a spiritual experience when I realize that these are just empty rooms. That which happens in here, we bring it with us, every one of us, and it intermingles and becomes a group conscience, a higher power. You call it what you are, what you want, but there's a dynamic something that happens when you and I come together that never happened any place I'd ever been. And I just sat back there, and I let it wash over my soul, and I hungered for it. And newcomer, if you be like me, I knew like I was, I didn't have it. I didn't have what them people had, but I wanted it. It's too bad I'm not an alcoholic. If there's another name for the disease that you and I have, it's called I ain't got it. You know? I knew I was weird and different and 3 steps ahead of the man with a butterfly net that hadn't discovered me yet. But you see, that had been an answer for me. Everything ran out sooner or later, and I just had to switch the combination. And that was what I thought was wrong with me, is was them, if I could just find somebody to love me. And so I looked around. And at all them single, sober, good-looking young guys, and I said, man, I'm going to get me one of those. And I did. It was the sickest one there. I had radar. I mean, he picked me up, and my eyes were spinning. And for 10 months, I came around Alcoholics Anonymous as a visitor. In Pomona, they'd go around the room, and when it came to me, I'd say, I'm Angie, and I'm a visitor. Nobody ever said you don't belong here. Somehow you understood it. I've been kicked in the teeth by life and rejected by everybody I'd ever come in contact with, and I couldn't have stood any more rejection. You put your arm around me and you said, keep coming back. Keep coming back. Do you know what that feels like when you're used to people saying, keep on going, weirdo? Huh? What a disappointment it was to me when I found out you were telling that to everybody. I thought it was just me you were saying that stuff to. And I'm such a people pleaser. I don't want you to kick me out of here. So I get feeling a little uncomfortable, and I stopped drinking and double up on the Miltowns and Benzedrine and got weirder, and I didn't know I was getting weirder. And this guy wants to get rid of me. I'm not easy to get rid of because I don't have a backup. Everybody's got to have a backup before you give up this. You've got to have somebody else already waiting. So I moved to Pomona to be closer to the action. And I walk into a room one day, and there's this cute little boy talking. He had big blue eyes, and I have an affinity for blue eyes and blonde hair. Today it's blue eyes and gray hair. And he's saying he doesn't have a surfboard, he doesn't have a car, and he doesn't have a girlfriend. And I think to myself, come here, little boy, I'll take care of you. And I did. And he don't know what hit him. I mean, I came at him like a bomb. But after their relationship was over, he decided to become a minister. And I'd like to think that somehow in my small way, I helped push him over to God. I screwed up everything up here. I spilled the Coke, and I didn't wear it on myself. It just looks that way. But you see, this man, I didn't know what I was going through. It's called withdrawals. Nobody ever told me about withdrawals. All you ever said is you get sober and come to meetings and live happily ever after. That's all I wanted, is to find some guy and live happily ever after, preferably this cute young thing. And he was 21, and I was 32, going on 92. But you see, he loved me. He was the first man that had ever been kind to me. He was the first man that had ever been gentle with me. And everywhere that he went, he wanted to take me with him. And he didn't want me to stay at the house. He wanted to take me with him. And he always seemed so proud to be seen with me. He introduced me to his parents and to his friends with all that pride in his voice. And I'd have stayed there forever if I could have, you see, because I was so hungry to be treated that way. And he was the one that walked them streets with me. He was the one that took the brunt of my insanity. He was the one where that madness would be so terrible, that terrible anxiety, that terrible fear, and I would go berserk, and I'd hit him, and he'd hold me close and love on me and pray over me, you see. I didn't like women, and I didn't trust men, and that don't leave you much. But I seem to trust that young man. Bill Wilson said in his writings that the good is the enemy of the best. I was always willing to settle for some little corner of good, because that's all I thought that I had coming. I know today that you and I do not come together by accident. I truly believe that we come together by divine appointment. By divine appointment. And yet every relationship has its beginning and its parting. That's not to say that I like partings even today. But I know that when you go on your way, you take a little bit of me with you. And you leave a little bit of you behind. And we're never the same because our lives have touched. I'm grateful that my higher powers sent that gentle young man into my life at a time when I was so vulnerable, so scared, and he was gentle with me for a long time. But see, I didn't know anything about God, and I didn't know anything about the program. All I wanted was to just be happy and live happily, somebody to love me, and so hungry to be loved and live happily ever after. And I turned my will and my life over to this man, and after 3 months I got well. And 3 more months I just thought maybe I'd made a big deal out of this stuff, and when he got drunk, so did I. It was not my worst drunk. I had had a lot of worse drunks, but it seemed to be my most hopeless one. I knew I had tried Alcoholics Anonymous, and I knew it worked, and it worked for you. But good things had always worked for you. My case was different. I came back to you because a man named Carson called me up on a rainy Wednesday night in December and brought me back to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, Carson was the type of a man that all people that knew him would say that he was a man that would prey on young women in new women in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know anything about that. And today I watch it very carefully before I join in character assassination, because Carson never said anything out of line to me. The only thing that Carson did for me is he brought me back to you. And I don't know if I would have come back. It's one thing for me to know what a failure I am, It's another thing to make it out in the open, in the public. He brought me back. And the miracle for me is not that I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and not that I've come back to Alcoholics Anonymous. The miracle for me is that I am still here. And that last December the 22nd, I celebrated my 22nd birthday. You see, that is the miracle for me. And not because of anything that I've done. Everything that I have done with my life was up to them. You see, the victory is not mine. It belongs to us. Whatever I have today in my life that's of any consequences is because many people have come and shared with me. I know that it isn't the messenger, that it is the message. And tonight I am your messenger. But the message that I bring to you is a message of hope of the people that have shared their life with me for many, many years. People like Les Eccles that's sitting over here that has been a part of my life for so many years and have shared with me not only in the good times but in the bad times. I came here so terrified and I was desperate. If there's anything that kept me here was the absolute drank all the fun out of the bottle, and I was desperate for something. I came back now thinking I was too alcoholic, where before I thought I was a little alcoholic, now I thought I was too alcoholic. When it finally dawned on me that probably was what was wrong with me, that terrified me and scared me more than anything else, because I'd never been able to stop anything I wanted to do. Today I can't stop anything I want to do. And they would read stuff that would say, "Rarely have we seen a person fail." You know, they never smile when they read chapter 5. Have you ever noticed that? Rarely have we seen a person fail. And I knew when they say rarely, somebody wasn't going to make it. And then there are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. I thought, man, I'm screwed. I knew I was born that way. My mother will tell you I was born that way. She can remember stuff I don't even remember. But a little further on down it says, and then there are those that have grave emotional and mental disorders. That's got to be some of the wisest words in that book. That's the catch-all for those of us that think that our case is different. Because when they would read that, I could not look them in the eye because I knew they were looking right at me. But a little further on down it says, many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Now, I'm not presumptuous to stand up here and tell you that I have the capacity to be honest, because I truthfully don't know the difference between right and wrong. You may think that's a horse pucky, but I'm going to tell you that I can think of something and go home and pray about it and meditate about it and pray about it, because I consider myself pretty spiritual, especially when God talks to me. And once I decide it's His will for me, there ain't nothing to lay it on you. But God sends people called sponsors that they ruin it. Don't they just ruin it? My sponsor is of the fascist variety. And I'm glad I didn't know her then, but I'll tell you what, I know her now, and she ruins everything for me. I had a gift earlier today, which was an ashtray. I used to take ashtrays. Every time I go speak someplace, I take an ashtray because it was a souvenir. You got to have a souvenir. Matchbooks are not too good. But ashtrays are big, and some of them are real pretty. And my sponsor found out about it. She says, "It's stealing." I said, "It's not stealing, it's souvenirs." I couldn't convince her that it was souvenirs. She said, she got real disgusted. You know how sponsors get when they can't reach you? She says, "Well, I don't know about you, Angie, but my integrity is worth more than an ashtray." Oh, she really hurt me. Because I no longer could go pick up an ashtray, because I'll be damned if her integrity is going to be worth more than mine. So I'd like to thank Bob from Midland I think he said he was from Odessa, or someplace in this big state here. It brought me an ashtray, and it's got a receipt to it, so I can go and shove it under Mary Reagan's nose and stuff. She wasn't my sponsor at that time. The group was my sponsor. I had a lady that had volunteered to be my sponsor. Now, I don't like them women any more sober than I did when I was drinking. Yeah, the ones that got a lot of time look at you. You know, they look at you when they got a lot of time. I don't want them looking at me because they're seeing something I don't want them to see. Whatever it was, I didn't want them with a little smirk on their face. You know, them people that got a lot of time. Today, I know why they look at you because they do know. Because that's where they come from. That's how they know. And so I give them lots of room. And them younger girls, well, I'm squiring this cute little guy here, and I used to check out them young girls. I'm glad they didn't have a lot of young girls at that time. I said, let's go this way, honey. You know, I used to save him from young girls. I mean, they couldn't make him as happy as I was making him, right? Very spiritual person today. But the men were always so much friendlier, especially if you're young and you're cute and you're always asking for help. And because in the beginning they all know more than me, then I know more than some of them, and then I hate some of them. The day came when I hated a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I know none of you here is ever that tacky to hate a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. But today I can tell you the truth. I hated this guy. I hated the way he walked, the way he talked, the way he smiled, everything about him. You know, just, oh God, he was sober 12 and a half years and didn't know nothing. And and then you say things like, resentments are the number one offender for alcoholics. It's fatal used to scare me because, you know, I didn't want to get drunk. So I went to some of you guys that had a lot of time that looked like you knew what you were talking about, and I put up my smile on my face so you wouldn't think I was a bad person. And I asked, how do you get over resentment? Just a tiny little bitty one. Nothing. And you'd say, turn it over easy, does it? This too shall pass. One day at a time, go home, read the book, keep coming back, and don't drink. I gotta do what you tell me to do. So I go home and I do all that stuff, and I come back the next night and I tested. You know, you look around. I wouldn't be happy till I saw him. You know, you can tell when you see him because your gut goes. You swallowed a rock or something, you know. I go to somebody else so you wouldn't know I didn't know what you said, what you meant. And again I'd say, how do you get over resentments? And again they'd say, turn it over easy, does it? This too shall pass. One day at a time, go home, read the book, keep coming back, and don't drink. After a while, I got the message. You don't know the answer either. We're really in trouble. I don't know what else to do. I'm glad I didn't know that I had choices. I didn't know that I was so smart. I didn't know you could walk out of a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I would just sit there and suffer. I suffered. One day he was talking, and he started crying. And I thought, how embarrassing. He's crying. Doesn't he know that men aren't supposed to cry? Only sissies and women cry. Oh, hasn't he ever heard of John Wayne or Iwo Jima, Emiliano Zapata, Pancho Villa, somebody like that? How embarrassing. After the meeting, everybody went on and put their arms around him while he's crying. Well, I didn't want you to know that I was the only dog among you. So I went and gave him one of those, you know, the stiff hugs, where you go and hug them because you're supposed to love them. Jesus, you hope they don't breathe on you or to you. He don't know I'm putting the stiff arm hug on him. So he puts his head on my shoulder and starts to cry. I don't know what happened. I learned about the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous because you see, all that hate and all that anger melted away as if it had never been. And I found out that in Alcoholics Anonymous, the thing we do is survive. That I just keep doing what you tell me to do, and I don't even know it's going to work. till after I do it, and then it works. And I'm wondering how come I didn't learn to do it all the time. And then I'm thinking, I'm never going to forget this again. And between every 2 surrenders, I always forget how I did it the last time. I just know that I just keep doing the things. I haven't got any big spiritual message to give you, except to tell you that this program works. This program doesn't care who works it. It just works if you work it. It just happens. And you know, even in spite of me, I've gotten better. Even in spite of me, I have touched that microchip of my higher power that's inside of me, and I didn't know that. For 5.5 years, I was a visitor in Alcoholics Anonymous of a different sort. Now, when I married that young man, knowing one day he'd leave, and I knew I had warped my children forever, and I still had a lot of secrets. I had a sponsor, but she used to talk to me in sponsorship, and I don't know what she's talking about. She had 23 years, and I had 2 years when she became my sponsor, and I don't know what she's talking about. And I'm such a people pleaser, I couldn't tell her that I didn't understand what she meant. I would just say, yes. When she'd come and visit, I'd always have several problems to give her, so she could solve them, so she would get off my case in case she wanted to ask me anything significant. One time she could see through that, but I didn't think so. And she'd say, "Ma, you're so good at waving the red herring." What do I know? I'm a Mexican. I don't know about herrings. And today I know what she meant. She said she could see through that when she was trying to reach me. But she couldn't reach me because Chuck C. used to say, you can't see till you can see, and you can't hear till you can hear. And those were the times I needed that time in Alcoholics Anonymous to start claiming my chair here. But there was a big difference between believing in a higher power and trusting in one. And what happened to me is that I had to make another big surrender, another emotional surrender that I didn't want to do. I was sober 5.5 years, and my children started taking drugs and drinking, and I would pray, God, spare my babies. God, spare my babies. 10 Hail Marys, 10 Our Fathers, go to confession and communion. That doesn't happen. And they still went down the alcohol and drug route. And the day came when I came home and we had a big fight. I hit them. They hit me back. They ran off. One even went to Ohio. I hated my mother, only went 20 miles away. Here she went to, I didn't even know any Mexicans in Ohio. The oldest one went to live in a commune and came home one day with a burn the size of a silver dollar on her chest, where people had been putting out cigarettes on her chest, and I died inside. I just died. I had a nervous breakdown. Again, I contemplated an attempt at suicide. In the back of my mind, I always had the thought, if this program doesn't work for me, I'm just going to kill myself. I just can't go back to that madness out there, but I sure want to die. Living had never been anything that I really wanted. Drunk or sober, life was just too hard. That young man went and took me to the psycho ward, went home, packed his clothes, and left me. And everything that I ever feared came about. And there was nothing but devastating pain that made all them walls come down. And the reason I stand before you is because of the people in Alcoholics Anonymous that came around me at that time. It is from the women that I've learned to be a woman. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we share the secrets of our heart with each other. And I finally knew that I was not so different, that it didn't matter whether you drank in your kitchen and in your bedroom and I drank in the bars. We felt the same dirty and shame about who we were. And so in here we learned to be each other's mamas, and I have been mothered by the women in Alcoholics Anonymous. You have taken me to your heart and you have rocked me. And I realize that you do love me and that I love you back. That is the miracle. We are each other's mamas when we need it. And it is from the men in Alcoholics Anonymous that have treated me like a lady, that I've learned to be a lady. There was a man named Dave that I went to and said, Dave, what's wrong with me that I can't seem to form a one-to-one relationship, not even with a beautiful man like Bruce? And he held me close and he said, you are a beautiful, warm, loving lady. And one day you will know the reason
And I believed him. I believed him. Me that had never believed anything good about me, I believed that there was possibly something good about me. I went home and got on my knees and I said, thank you, God, for showing me the reason. Bring him back. And he didn't come back. And so I thought about them people, and I thought, screw them all, let them do what the goddamn please. I'm so tired. I don't know about you, but for me that means surrender in the only language that I understand. I made peace with my higher power and said, okay, God, I'm never going to be happy again. All you ever want me to do is work with the sick women, drunks, let them puke on me. All right. I don't know about your higher power, but mine has a weird sense of humor. When I want something so bad, I can't have it. As soon as I say, screw it, here it comes. Why does it work that way? I don't know why it works that way. Sometimes I try to fool him and tell him it ain't all that important. He always seems to know. It ain't all that important, God. No. It was a turning point not only of my sobriety, but of my whole life. Me that had always looked for somebody to plug in an umbilical cord. I think it was more like a vacuum cleaner and an emotional parasite, because I'd never had nothing just of my own. But when I got to the other side, because there is another side, there's another side when there's devastation, and I was forced to live by myself, and I didn't want to live by myself. For I'm one of those ladies that has had to learn to live alone. I lived alone almost 10 years until I learned to be comfortable just being with me. Till I got to the place where I realized whatever I wanted from them people, they never had it to give. I was an emotional parasite, and they didn't have to give the fulfillments of my heart. You know, when I got to the other side, beyond the part where I wanted, have you ever wanted to put a shotgun about 3 inches from somebody's belly and just blow all the little pieces all over? Didn't you just fantasize that? Or run him down on the freeway back and forth. My sponsor assures me they don't lock you up for being crazy, only for acting crazy. And all my character defects are well intact. If God will, she also has assured me if God removes all my character defects, I'll disappear. So some of them are here to stay. The 7-step prayer says that he removes only the ones that are useful to him and to my fellow men. And so I'm comfortable with the rest. Somehow what God thinks ought to be removed and what I think ought to be removed, he just says, you want what? When I got to the other side, I touched a power and a strength that was deep within me, and I knew that nothing and nobody could ever own me again. After all is said and done, there's only you and me, God, anyway. You know, when they go away, when they all go away, there's only you and me, God, anyway. If they don't go away, there's only you and me, God, anyway. Because you and I have that microchip of the higher power that we touch together. But it gets regenerated when I am by myself with my higher power. That's what I learned at that time. That when I care of what happens to you, I threw myself into this program without any reservation, knowing I'm never going to be happy again. And that is the reason that I walk tall with dignity and self-respect today. Tomorrow is not promised to you, and it's not promised to me. The only thing that I have promised in life is what you and I have today. And what a joy to know that you and I have come together by divine appointment today to learn from each other. You see, I learned that at that time when I quit being an emotional parasite because my higher power said it was time. I went to work and with a lot of women. You know, I said, okay, God, you never want me to be happy again. All you ever wanted me to do is work with the sick women, drunks, let them puke on me. And so I did. I did a lot of 12-step work, and somehow I learned the secret about when I care what happens to you, when I want your happiness, when I want your joy, when I hug you and hold me close, feels exactly the way I thought you loving me would feel. Not, when you love me, it doesn't make me feel that way. But when I love and care about you, all morning today there was a lady in my room that came and we rocked each other, and I loved upon her. You see, that's all I have to share with you is the love and the freedom that I've gotten because I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not smart enough or I can manipulate my story enough to tell you how I work this program. The only thing I can tell you is that I do everything that I did when I came in. I read the book, I go to a lot of meetings, and I share myself with anybody that wants me because I'm so grateful that I'm wanted. Do you know that you see something inside of me that nobody ever saw before, and that you bring out the best in me? If I waited to love you till I love myself, we've both been in chicken shit country. But you see, I learned to love you. And I thought you had poor taste when you started loving me. I just thought, Jesus, you don't know who I am, but you knew who I was, and you loved me, and you let it be okay just to be me. And I have learned so many freedoms. I became self-supporting through my own contributions. And my children came back. I didn't even want them to come back. They still were into drugs and all this stuff. And one day I got to know what you'd given me, and that was a long time ago today. But what happened is my sister, who had always been held up as an example for me, she chose to take her life. You see, she was heavy into booze and the pills, and she still didn't want what we had. I tried to give her this message. A newcomer, I don't come to save you, I don't come to teach you, I don't come to give you nothing. If I could have saved anybody, it would have been my sister. If I could save anybody, it would be one of my daughters that's out there. I don't know where she's at tonight, but I know what she's doing. She's trying to cure that madness inside with whatever poison works for her now, you see. I can't do that. The only thing I can do is come and share my life with you, because I truly believe that I am God's melody of life and that He sings His song through me. Someplace out there, somebody needs to hear the places I come from, because His hand is always light whenever it is heavy. 2 weeks after that, I became a grandma. You know, I didn't know how to be a mother, and I don't know how to be a grandma, but it came natural. You know, them little babies that look up at you, and they're so easy to buy. You know, I might have been a failure as a mother, but I can hold myself up to any grandma. They thought Grandma and Santa Claus were synonymous. You know, on Christmas time, when everything comes on in the television, they say, Grandma, buy me that. God, I just can't hardly wait to get over that, to give it to the children. They're not very impressed with me anymore because they're getting bigger, but when they were small, you should see how their little faces would light up. They say, "You go, Grandma!" You know, the little squeaky voice and the snotty nose, and they, what do you care? You know, what do you care? I tell you, I'm good. They came home one day, and I ran out of milk because I'm always been on a diet, and so I was making out of powdered milk, and the oldest one's little eyes got real big and says, Mama, Grandma just made milk out of water. I tell you, I'm good. I told you I'm good. One day at a time, I don't drink because I'm an alcoholic. One day at a time, I don't steal because I'm a thief. And one day at a time, I didn't get married because I kept falling in love. Jesus, you know, they just didn't straighten up any better just because you're a spiritual giant. They don't get any better, those princes that turn into toads. I got a sneaking suspicion that maybe I had something to do with turning them into toads, but we don't look at the defect, those kind of defects. You know, we just make sure we accept whatever God's made up to now. And so I started settling in. I had a job where I thought I was terrific, and they were paying me more than I was worth, and I was saving my money for my old age. And then I met this 6-foot, blue-eyed, gray-haired cowboy. I never knew any cowboys from Blythe that were farmers. They wear the hats and the shoes. I mean, I'm used to people with tattoos and stuff, and he was brand new, and I said, Jesus Christ, oh God, God, do you know what's happening here? I don't even like them 16-year-old feelings, I'm around him, and I go, you get away from here. I don't want nobody to know. And he got out of that hospital and went home and started calling me all the time, sending me flowers and phone calls and cards. Well, I'm a sucker for all that stuff. And my sponsor said, he's a nice guy. Well, what did I care what the rest of you were saying? My friend Frank Sloan says, Jesus Christ, Angie, give that poor guy a break. That's what most of you were saying. So, but in AA, I found out Les Echoes taught me here about, if you got any secrets, tell them. Because then you don't have any secrets. Oh, because you see, it's the secrets that build them walls between me and you. So I picked up stakes and moved to Blythe, where I thought I'd live happily ever after. Walk through the alfalfa fields and stuff like that. It don't happen that way. There's a lot of work in our relationship, even though he's easy. God, he says I'm the greatest cook. So I'm over there making the tortillas and beans and all this kind of. He loves Mexican food, speaks Spanish better than me, and so I'm over there cooking all the time, anything he wants, and he says, his house never looks so clean. I'm over there scrubbing it all over the place. He's got 75 shirts, and they're all color coordinated. He says, God, my shirts never look so beautiful. I'm with the ironing all the time. He never had it so good. And we're both dedicated to making me happy. But you see, he knows what makes me happy. He knows that when I go and do this thing and people say, doesn't he ever get mad because you're gone so much? And I said, no, you see, he knows that we carry the message, he and I. He carries the messenger, and I bring the messenger here to you. And I am so grateful. Sometimes I can hardly stand it to know that when there's people up here like this lady, they came up before the meeting and says, we heard your tape. And you know what they're really saying when they're saying you're so wonderful? They're saying, Jesus, I'm so grateful there's another weird one out there instead of, I'm glad I'm not the only strange one that's staying sober by mistake, and stay here long enough to walk in the sunlight of the Spirit. I took that little granddaughter with me to a conference once, and I put a long white blouse that covers a multitude of tortillas and beans and long white pants. And she looked up at me and she says, Grandma, you look just like the white angel. And I looked at the little child, and there was something happened between us when we looked at each other, because all she's seen is what you've done with me. She's never had to see her grandma looking like a monster from being battered, crawling around in her own field. She hasn't had to see the batterings that I did to her mother, you see. All she's seen is the warmth and the love that I have for her, that you have given me. If you ever were a person that lived in a bedroom and crawling around in agony in your own field, where you can't drink and can't be sober and can't live and can't die, there's no road that leads from there to here. When you will read to me and say, we will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace, and I would sob and I'll tell you that I can't remember the last time that I had that agony inside of me. I can't remember the last time that I had a loneliness. Everywhere that I go, there you go with me, because I am today what you've made of me, because he has touched me. May he do the same for you. Thank you so much for having me here today.